Anne hurried out of the supermarket, her arms weighed down with bags brimming with groceries. She was rushing to get home and start preparing a festive dinner to mark her 40th birthday. Only her closest friends and their families were invited to this intimate celebration. Lost in her thoughts, she stepped off the curb and onto the parking lot road, only to be jolted by a sudden sharp shove from behind. She tumbled to the ground, her bags crashing onto the asphalt and their contents scattering everywhere. A startled cry escaped her lips, mingling surprise and pain. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you. Where did you come from? The driver, visibly shaken, rushed to help Anne up. He was distressed by the accident. You nearly ran me over. How do people like you even get a driver's license? Anne retorted, rubbing her sore hand. Well, you weren't paying attention either, the man shot back defensively, though his tone softened under Anne's fiery glare. I'm sorry. Let me drive you home and help with your groceries, he offered, beginning to gather the scattered items. Anne, regaining her composure, realized she had been partly at fault for the mishap. Her tone softened. You're right. I wasn't paying attention. If you could give me a ride home, I'd appreciate it. I'm Matthew, the man introduced himself with a tentative smile, extending his hand. Anne returned the smile, albeit faintly. During the drive, the atmosphere lightened as they exchanged pleasantries. Your husband is a lucky man to have such a smart and beautiful wife. I, unfortunately, wasn't so fortunate. My wife left me, and now it's just me and my little daughter, Matthew shared, a hint of sadness in his voice. Do you have children? Anne's expression shifted, the question touching a sensitive nerve. Despite being married for years, she had never become a mother, a fact that pained her deeply. She replied curtly, No, we don't have children. Thank you for the ride. Have a nice day. The car pulled up to a large, elegant house with high gates. Anne, I'm sorry if I upset you, Matthew said, sensing her discomfort but unsure of the cause. No, it's not your fault. My nerves have been frayed lately. Thank you again. Anne quickly carried the groceries inside and set about preparing dinner. As she set the table in the living room, she called her husband, but he didn't answer. She sighed heavily. Her husband had been working late into the night for some time, often becoming irritable when Anne asked about his schedule. Over time, she had grown accustomed to his absence, learning to manage on her own. The doorbell rang, and the intercom screen showed Gwen and Wes, smiling warmly. They had been friends with Anne and her husband since college, the only friends who remained close. Christopher, her husband, preferred keeping their circle small, only including old friends. Anne, you look stunning. It's like you're perpetually 25, Gwen gushed. Happy birthday, darling. This is for you, Wes added, handing her a beautiful bouquet. Where's Christopher? Not home yet. You know him, always busy with work, meetings, and urgent projects, Anne replied, trying to mask her disappointment. I don't know how you cope, always alone. Maybe you should consider working again. Wes is looking for a new specialist, and a good architect is hard to find. You were the best in our course, Gwen suggested, sensing the strained atmosphere. I'd love to, but Christopher is against it, Anne admitted. Forgive me, but I must say this. Christopher is selfish, and you are letting him turn you into a housekeeper while he lives his life as he pleases. It's convenient for him, Gwen expressed bluntly. Let's not dwell on that now. Come to the table. I hope Christopher joins us soon, Anne said, trying to diffuse the tension as she led her guests to the dining room. Later, as the group reminisced about their college days, Christopher finally arrived home. His demeanor was serious, and his smile seemed more out of courtesy than joy. Christopher, you should have come earlier. It's your wife's birthday, and you didn't even bring flowers, Gwen remarked, unable to hide her disapproval. "I was in a rush, as you can see." "Happy birthday," Anne, Christopher said, his tone indicating he was in no mood for criticism. "Thank you, dear." Anne opened the box and forced a smile. Christopher always resorted to jewelry as a gift, never putting much thought into it. Despite his presence, the dinner table became a little livelier, but constant messages on his phone interrupted the conversations. As the evening drew to a close, Anne and Christopher bid farewell to their friends, and once again, silence enveloped the house. Anne began cleaning up, while Christopher remained engrossed in his phone. When the cleanup was finished, Anne turned to her husband with a heavy heart. "Christopher, don't you feel that even when you're physically here, your mind is always elsewhere?" "Stop nagging." "I'm working," he responded curtly. "Okay, I understand," Anne said quietly, holding back tears as she walked to the bedroom. Once inside, she let the tears flow freely. Despite being married, she felt profoundly lonely and unwanted. Losing her father at a young age and never connecting with her stepfather only added to her sense of isolation. Thankfully, her friends had always stood by her, otherwise she would have been completely alone. Reflecting on her friends' advice, Anne seriously considered the idea of going back to work to fill the void and loneliness. The next morning, Anne woke up early, only to find her husband missing from their bed. A sense of dread washed over her. Peeking into his study, she saw Christopher asleep on the couch, a jacket draped over him. Her heart raced with anxiety. Something was undeniably wrong in their marriage. After showering and getting ready, Anne found Christopher in the living room, lost in thought as he gazed out the window with a cup of coffee in hand. He didn't notice her approach. "Good morning," Anne greeted him, startling him out of his reverie. "You've been acting so strange lately. Are you okay? You slept in the office. Are you avoiding me? Is there something wrong at work? What's going on?" She bombarded him with questions. "We need to talk," Christopher replied, his voice unnervingly calm. "Yes, I wanted to talk too. I know you'll be against it, but I've decided to start working again. I've fallen in love with another woman. She's pregnant, and we're expecting a child," Christopher said, his tone flat and emotionless. Anne's world shattered. She swayed on her feet, barely able to stand. "How long has this been going on?" she managed to ask. "What does it matter? I found out about the pregnancy yesterday, if that's what you're asking," he replied indifferently. "Thank you for not ruining my birthday," Anne whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Let's not turn this into a scene," Christopher said impatiently. "Christopher, do my feelings mean nothing to you?" "And what about my feelings, Anne? I'm 40 years old. All my friends have children. What do we have?" Christopher's voice rose, unaffected by her tears. "How dare you blame me for our childlessness? Do you have any idea what I've been through? How many doctors I've seen? Stop this drama. Thousands of people get divorced and move on. I will soon have a son, and I will finally be happy. We'll discuss the divorce details tonight," Christopher declared, slamming the door as he left. Anne crumbled to the floor, overwhelmed by pain and humiliation. Christopher headed straight to his mistress Ellen's apartment, eager to tell her he had finally confessed to his wife and that a divorce was imminent. Using his key, he let himself in, only to find Ellen packing a large suitcase. "I'm home. Why isn't anyone greeting me? What's going on here? Are we going somewhere?" he asked, trying to lighten the mood. Ellen looked startled to see him. "Hi, darling. I didn't expect you so early," she said. "So, are we going somewhere?" Christopher asked again, spinning her playfully. Ellen pouted theatrically, leaving Christopher puzzled. "Yes, we're going to your beautiful country house where we'll soon live as a happy family," Ellen replied with a forced smile. Christopher felt something was off. "Okay, where's my surprise?" he asked, trying to keep the mood light. Ellen sighed, looking at him with a mix of pity and frustration. "Christopher, I've decided to leave you. I'm sorry." "What?" he asked, disbelief evident in his voice. "You heard me. I'm leaving you," Ellen repeated calmly. "But why?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Christopher, are you so naive that you don't see what's been happening?" Ellen asked, her voice tinged with exasperation. Christopher's phone rang, snapping him out of his thoughts. He answered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Hello, Brandon. How can I help you?" "Anne needs your help." "Come home right now," Brandon said urgently. "But what's wrong with my wife?" Christopher asked, his voice tinged with concern. "I said, come home," Brandon repeated firmly. Christopher ended the call and glanced at Ellen. "I have to go home. I'll be back soon. We need to talk about everything," he said, his mind racing. Driving home as fast as he could, Christopher's thoughts were in turmoil. He had loved Anne and always tried to make her happy, but somewhere along the way, he began to doubt her love for him. Ellen had come into his life then beautiful, vibrant, and young. Initially, he felt guilty about the affair, but when Ellen announced her pregnancy, he convinced himself she was the one he wanted to spend his life with. Now, everything felt uncertain. Arriving home, he found Brandon waiting in the living room. "Christopher, sit down," Brandon said, his voice steady but serious. "What's wrong with Anne?" Christopher asked, anxiety gripping him. "Christopher, you know I care deeply for Anne. We've been friends for a long time and I will always support her. I never thought I'd have to say this to you, but you've hurt her deeply. Anne is suffering because of you. Why did you leave her for another woman?" "I don't understand, Brandon. Yes, I love Ellen. We're going to have a child. Anne and I never had children. I want to be happy. I want a family. What's so wrong with that?" Christopher replied, defensively. "Anne is pregnant," Brandon said, locking eyes with Christopher. Christopher froze. "What are you talking about? How do you know?" "She told me." "Anne is pregnant with your child. She needs you, Christopher. She loves you. Do you understand that?" Christopher sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "What have I done?" he whispered, the weight of his actions crashing down on him. Brandon stood up, his voice filled with a mix of frustration and hope. "It's not too late to fix things. Go to her, Christopher. Go to Anne and make things right. She needs you. Your child needs you." Christopher looked up at Brandon, tears welling in his eyes. "Thank you, Brandon. Thank you for telling me. I'll go to her right now." Christopher stood up and made his way to the bedroom. He found Anne lying on the bed, her face stained with tears. "Anne," he said softly, his voice trembling. "Anne, please forgive me. I didn't know. I didn't understand. I'm so sorry." Anne looked at him, her eyes reflecting a deep, painful betrayal. "Christopher, how could you? How could you do this to me?" He approached her slowly, his heart breaking at the sight of her anguish. "I was blind, Anne. I thought I was doing what was best for me, but I was wrong. I realize now that I have been selfish and cruel. Please give me a chance to make it right." Anne's tears flowed freely as she listened to his plea. "You shattered my heart, Christopher. How can I trust you again?" Christopher knelt beside the bed, taking her hand gently. "I know I have a long way to go to earn your trust back, but I am committed to you, to us, and our baby. I will do whatever it takes to prove my love and dedication to you." Anne studied his face, searching for sincerity. "This won't be easy, Christopher. There's so much hurt between us." "I know," he replied, his voice steady. "But I am here for the long haul, Anne. I want to rebuild our life together. Please let me try." The room was filled with a tense silence as Anne weighed his words. Finally, she nodded slightly, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Okay, Christopher, but this is your last chance. Don't make me regret it." Christopher squeezed her hand gently, relief washing over him. "Thank you, Anne. I won't let you down." As they sat together, the promise of a new beginning slowly took shape, fragile yet full of potential. "I was wrong, Anne. I was so wrong. Please, give me another chance. Let's be a family. Let's raise our child together." Anne looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, Christopher, but you have to prove to me that you're serious. You have to show me that you love me and our child." "I will, Anne. I promise. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." Christopher took Anne in his arms, holding her close. He knew it would be a long road to rebuilding their relationship, but he was determined to do it. For Anne, for their child, and their future together. Meanwhile, Matthew was in his apartment, tending to his 5-year-old daughter, Eva, who had just fallen asleep. He heard a knock at the door and opened it to find Anne standing there, holding a bag of fruits and medicine. "Take off your coat and come in, please. Eva fell asleep, and I made some tea. You're all wet, and I wouldn't want you to get sick because of me," Matthew said tenderly. Matthew helped Anne take off her coat and invited her to the kitchen. The atmosphere in Matthew's apartment was modest, and Anne noticed the simplicity of his living conditions. She knew the amount of money needed for Matthew's project was substantial, yet it was clear he wasn't wealthy. As they sipped tea, Matthew shared more about his life and struggles. "My daughter, Eva, was born healthy, but a month later, doctors diagnosed her with a congenital heart defect. When she was 1, they performed a successful operation, and she quickly recovered. However, a year later, she had her first asthma attack. No one has been able to cure her completely. And doctors recommend we take her out of the city more often for fresh air, hoping it would help her condition," Matthew explained. Anne listened intently, feeling a deep compassion for Matthew and his daughter. "That's why I thought building a house now is the way to go. The only problem is that the house would be practically by the river. You're the only one who could solve that problem," Matthew said, looking at Anne with hope in his eyes. "Please excuse my curiosity, but what do you do? Where do you work? It must be difficult to raise a daughter alone." "You're both a mother and a father to her," Anne said, genuinely interested. "Well, of course, it's very difficult sometimes, especially when EVA is sick. I'm worried. When EVA is healthy, I take her to daycare and go to work myself. I'm a mechanic at a technical service station." "How do you manage to do everything?" Anne asked, amazed by his resilience. "I'm used to it. I can't afford to manage everything myself because there's no one else to take care of EVA. We're trying to do everything together. Now we're eagerly waiting for the construction of our dream home to begin. When we finish, I hope everything will get easier. My childhood friend built a sawmill in the village not far from my plot. He says he needs me as a good woodsman." "Wow, do you understand this kind of work?" Anne was surprised. "Of course, my father did it all his life. We had a profitable wood processing business. By the way, I've been in this area since I was a child, but when my mother died, my father eventually met another woman and sold everything. I didn't even think about doing this business. I just wanted to leave for the city. My father gave me a large sum of money from the sale of the business. I graduated from agricultural college. I know everything about forestry. I became a car mechanic because my profession wasn't in demand in the city, but I made good money. Enough for me and Eva. I still plan to leave the city and do what I love," Matthew shared. Anne felt a deep connection to Matthew's story. His dedication to his daughter and his dream resonated with her. She admired his strength and determination, qualities she felt she needed in her own life. As they continued to talk, Anne felt a sense of peace and purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. She realized that, like Matthew, she had the strength to rebuild her life and find happiness, not just for herself but for her child as well. Anne listened with admiration. She had never met such simple and sincere people in her life, except for Gwen and Wes. Matthew shared a lot about his plans for the future, and she liked everything about him: his sense of humor, simplicity, way of communicating, care, and attention. She especially liked his sincere eyes and smile. Matthew and Anne were so engrossed in their conversation that they didn't notice Eva entering the kitchen. "Daddy, who is this lady?" Eva asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Eva, darling, how are you feeling?" Matthew smiled, turning to his daughter. "Come here, I'll introduce you to my friend. This is Anne. She lives next door and came to help us as soon as she found out that you were sick." "Hello, Anne. I'm Eva. Very pleased to meet you," Eva said politely. "Eva, you're a very cute and beautiful girl," Anne said, her heart melting at the sight of the little girl. "You're also very beautiful. Do you have a daughter?" Eva asked innocently. "Unfortunately, no. I would like to have a smart daughter like you," Anne replied sincerely. "Well, if Eva agrees, I suggest we order pizza and watch an interesting movie. We have an unplanned day off tomorrow anyway," Matthew suggested, trying to lighten the mood. Eva clapped her hands with joy and hugged both Matthew and Anne. "Hooray! Will Anne also be with us?" Matthew looked imploringly at the confused woman. "Well, if you accept me into your team, I would be happy to join you," Anne said, stroking the little girl's unruly curls. The girl leaned against her, putting her head on her shoulder. Anne was touched by the child's sincerity, warmth, and openness. From that day on, a true friendship blossomed between Anne, Matthew, and Eva. Eva was delighted that Anne had become a frequent visitor in their home. The friendly trio spent time together playing board games, watching educational films about animals, and often visiting amusement parks and zoos. After spending months together, Anne could no longer imagine her life without Matthew and Eva, just as Matthew and his daughter couldn't imagine their lives without Anne. The construction of the house progressed rapidly. Wes entrusted Anne with another complex project, which she handled brilliantly. The employees now consulted Anne on difficult matters, and she never refused to help them. One day, when Wes came to the office, he seemed different than usual. Anne noticed this and decided to find out what was troubling him. "Wes, may I come in?" "I made coffee." She knocked on his office door, holding a cup in her hand. "Hello, Anne, come in." "Of course, you're always welcome," Wes smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Did something happen?" "You seem upset," Anne said gently, placing the cup on his desk. Wes sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "It's been a tough day, Anne. I'm dealing with some personal issues that are affecting my work." Anne sat down across from him, her concern evident. "Do you want to talk about it? Sometimes sharing can lighten the load." We hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I've been having some trouble at home. My wife and I are going through a rough patch, and it's starting to take a toll on me. I don't want it to affect the workplace, but it's hard to separate the two." Anne reached out and placed a comforting hand on his. "Wes, I'm here for you. You've been a great boss and friend. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know." We smiled faintly, appreciating her kindness. "Thank you, Anne. Just knowing that you and the team are holding things together here means a lot. I'll try to sort things out at home." Anne squeezed his hand gently before letting go. "Take your time, Wes. We'll manage here. Your family needs you, and we all want you to be okay." As she left his office, Anne couldn't help but reflect on how much her life had changed. She had found a sense of purpose and belonging with Matthew and Eva, and she was grateful for the supportive environment at work. With newfound strength, she was ready to face whatever challenges came her way, knowing she wasn't alone. That evening, as Anne returned to Matthew and Eva, she felt a deep sense of contentment. The warmth of their friendship had become a beacon of hope in her life, and she was determined to nurture it. Together, they faced each day with optimism, knowing that love, trust, and mutual support could overcome any obstacle. Yes, Anne, you're right. Something has indeed transpired. Remember when Christopher lent me some money? Well, he's now entangled in significant issues with his business and other personal matters. Ellen has given birth to a son, and in light of this, Christopher has demanded the money back much earlier than we had initially agreed. But that's not the worst part, Anne. He also instructed me to inform you that the apartment you're living in essence, he has started his own family now and will no longer be covering the mortgage for it. I suppose I should have anticipated this. It was always a bit surprising that the property was purchased on credit, but Christopher assured me he would handle the payments consistently. Once again, I placed my trust in him. And he deceived me yet again. I'll manage to repay my debt within the week. I just can't understand how he could treat you this way after everything you've done together. You sold your apartment and poured every last cent into the house where he now lives with another woman. I was so furious that I wanted to confront him physically. But the coward refused to meet with me. He insisted I deposit the money into his account. And because I supported you, he claimed there's nothing left for us to discuss, Wes said, his voice trembling with frustration and disbelief. Don't worry about it, Wes. The apartment is in my name. I have a well-paying job and a supportive boss, so I'll manage to pay off the loan myself. This entire ordeal has been a harsh life lesson. I was naive, young, and never imagined it would end this way. But now he has a son, you know. Christopher always dreamed of having children, and naturally he needs to focus on his future now, Anne said, her smile tinged with sadness and resolve. Are you seriously still feeling any pity for him after all he's done to you? We asked incredulously. Oh, Anne, regardless of everything, you're not alone in this. Gwen and I are here for you. Our company's reputation has flourished thanks to your hard work and dedication. That's why I've decided to give you a much-deserved raise. Thank you so much, Wes. Can I leave early today? I've finished all my tasks, and I want to stop by the store on my way home. Today is my birthday, and Matthew and I have already picked out a gift. We just need to go and pick it up. Wow, you've already picked out the gift with Matthew, we asked, smiling. Is it serious between you two? I think I should trust fate if it offers me a second chance. Matthew is an incredible person, and his daughter Eva is such a sweet girl. They've both given me a new lease on life and a reason to smile again, Anne said, her eyes glistening with emotion. Your eyes are sparkling, Anne. Don't let this chance for happiness slip through your fingers, Wes said warmly. You're right, Wes. I need to trust in fate. Thank you so much for being here for me. Without you and Gwen, I would have been completely overwhelmed by loneliness and despair, Anne said gratefully. A year later, Wes stood on the terrace of Anne and Matthew's new house, gazing out at the serene view of the river. Well, everyone, you've done a phenomenal job. Your house is stunning, and the plan to protect it from the river's flooding was executed perfectly. No flood will ever threaten this beautiful home. When do you plan on moving in? Probably when the time is right, Anne said, gently rubbing her rounded belly and gazing at Matthew with eyes full of love and joy. Matthew hugged his wife tenderly and kissed her cheek. We still have a few things to finish up. The workers are completing the interior, and then we'll be ready. Besides, Anne and I have decided to stay in the city until the baby is born, and then we'll consider moving. Matthew explained, his voice filled with excitement and anticipation for their future. Fantastic job, you two. I couldn't be happier for your new family. You've truly created something beautiful here, Wes said, beaming with pride and joy for his friends. Anne looked around at the house, her heart swelling with gratitude and happiness. This house represents a new beginning for us, a symbol of hope and love. I can't wait to start this new chapter with you, Matthew. And I can't wait to share every moment with you and our child, Matthew replied, his voice full of love and commitment. The three of them stood on the terrace, basking in the beauty of the moment and the promise of the future. It was a new beginning, filled with hope, love, and endless possibilities. "Oh, Wes, I never thought a person could experience such happiness," Anne expressed, her eyes shining. "You're a shining example, dear Matthew. Don't ever hesitate to ask for help. I'll always be there. Anne's family is my family. That's our rule." "Thank you, Wes. Your support means the world to us. I'll need some help. I've decided to get into woodworking. It's a passion of mine, and I plan to set up production locally soon," Matthew said, his enthusiasm evident. "That's fantastic news. But don't think for a second that I'll let Anne go. Not even in your dreams," Wes laughed heartily. "Wes, I wouldn't leave you or Gwen. You've both been so supportive. I value our friendship immensely and treasure your kindness. Besides, I enjoy my work, and the extra money is always welcome," Anne said warmly. "All right, enough business talk. Let's go see Gwen and the kids. They're probably missing us," Wes suggested with a smile. When they returned home, they found the children playing joyfully with a ball in the yard. Gwen was setting the table, having prepared a delicious treat in advance. By this time, Anne's life, once filled with heartache and betrayal, was gradually getting better. The apartment issue was resolved thanks to a lawyer hired by Wes, and Anne diligently paid off the mortgage with her decent salary. She married Matthew 6 months after they met, and Eva was thrilled to have a new mother, just like her friends. They developed a warm, trusting, and friendly relationship that many girls could envy. Matthew adored his wife and deeply appreciated her role in raising his daughter. Eva was overjoyed that she would soon have a sibling. Together they shopped for various baby items, bonding over the excitement of the new addition to their family. Anne couldn't imagine a life without Matthew and Eva. And one day, while Matthew was out of town, Anne went for a routine checkup. Gwen kindly agreed to stay with Eva, especially since her son Tommy was eagerly waiting to play with his new friend. Anne left the doctor's office in high spirits. The baby was developing well, the heartbeat was strong, and despite her age, no pregnancy complications were detected. As she left the clinic, she decided to visit the mall to look for toys for Eva and Tommy. However, an unexpected and unpleasant surprise awaited her there. She came face to face with her ex-husband, Christopher, who was visibly shocked upon seeing her pregnant. "Anne," how Christopher stammered, struggling to find his words. "You didn't waste much time grieving, did you?" "Nice to see you," he muttered, unable to form coherent thoughts. "Hello, Christopher. This isn't any of your concern. I heard your son was born. Congratulations. I'll say it's nice to see you, but it's not. I need to go." "Goodbye," Christopher, Anne said firmly, and continued on her way. Christopher stood there, stunned, watching her walk away. When he returned home, his young son ran to greet him. Ellen sat on the couch in the living room, her attention fixed on her phone. "Hi, Ellen. Are we going to have dinner?" Christopher asked from the doorway, trying to sound casual. Ellen looked up with a dissatisfied expression. "I asked you to transfer money to my card. Did you forget?" she said, ignoring his question. "Ellen, is that all you have to say to me? You've been acting strange lately. Is everything all right?" Christopher asked, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "I'm not acting strange, Christopher. I just don't like being ignored when I ask for something," Ellen retorted sharply. "This isn't a request. It sounds more like a demand. I'm having difficulties at work. We need to be more mindful of our spending, not like you're used to," Christopher replied, trying to keep his voice calm. You were married to someone who managed money wisely. And how did that end? I need to update my wardrobe. I don't want to look like a slob like her, Ellen snapped. Don't you dare talk about Anne like that. You're not worth her little finger. If it weren't for our son, Christopher's voice trailed off as he stormed to the playroom with their baby, leaving Ellen fuming on the couch. The tension in Christopher's home was palpable, a stark contrast to the warmth and love that now filled Anne's life. Despite the past and its painful memories, Anne had found happiness and a new beginning with Matthew and Eva. She had learned to trust fate and embraced the future with open arms, ready for the joys and challenges it would bring. Ellen, realizing she had crossed a line, went to the kitchen to prepare something for her husband's dinner. Meanwhile, Christopher tried to calm down by focusing on his son. Yet, what the 2-year-old told him left him with lingering doubts. The little boy, in his innocent way, shared how he had ice cream and played with his uncle during the day. That evening, Christopher postponed the uncomfortable conversation he planned to have with Ellen, but he casually asked what they had been up to. Ellen answered vaguely, claiming they had stayed home all day. Later that night, Christopher found himself unable to stop thinking about Anne. He noted how radiant she still looked, especially with her pregnancy glow. The thought of his ex-wife finding happiness with someone else gnawed at him, and a wave of irrational jealousy washed over him repeatedly. The next morning, Christopher followed his usual routine and prepared to go to work. Unexpectedly, before leaving, he said to Ellen, "I transferred the money you requested to your card, so you can update your wardrobe." Ellen's face lit up with a smile as she leaped towards her husband, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Thank you, my love. I adore you. See you tonight," she said. Christopher gently pushed her away and left the house. Instead of going to work, Christopher spent the day trailing Ellen to verify her activities. His suspicions were soon confirmed. He followed her to a residential area where she parked in front of a 10-story building, took their son in her arms, and went inside. Christopher waited patiently for her to return, which didn't happen until late in the afternoon. Ellen emerged with a young man carrying their son on his shoulders. Rage simmered within Christopher, but he held back, determined to uncover the full truth. Meanwhile, Matthew and Anne were finishing the final touches on their dream home, planning to spend the upcoming weekend there with their friends Wes and Gwen. "Matthew, I need to swing by my apartment to water the plants. We won't be here for a few days. Can you manage things here, maybe take Eva with you?" Anne asked. "Of course, my love. Eva and I will handle it together," Matthew replied cheerfully. Eva eagerly helped, carefully watering the plants and humming a tune. A sudden knock on the door interrupted their work. "It's probably Daddy. Can you open the door, dear, but first ask who it is," Anne instructed. "Okay, Mama Anne," Eva responded, running to the door. "Who is there?" she called out. Hearing a stranger's voice, she quickly called for Anne. When Anne peered through the peephole, she was shocked to see Christopher. "Christopher, what are you doing here?" she asked as she opened the door. "We need to talk. I'm a fool. Please forgive me for everything I've done." "Let's start over," Christopher pleaded, his eyes filled with regret. Anne's initial shock gave way to a mixture of emotions. "Christopher, it's too late. I've moved on. You should too," she replied, trying to remain calm. "But Anne, seeing you today reminded me of everything we once had. I realize now how much I've lost. Please just give me one more chance," Christopher begged, his voice cracking. Anne shook her head. "Christopher, you need to focus on your new family. I have a new life now, with people who truly care about me. You made your choices, and I've made mine. It's time we both accept that." Christopher's shoulders sagged in defeat. "I understand. I just needed to try," he said softly. "I wish you all the happiness in the world, Anne." As Christopher turned to leave, Anne felt a strange sense of closure. She closed the door, feeling lighter and more determined to embrace her new life. She looked at Eva, who had been quietly observing. "Let's finish up, dear. We have a wonderful weekend ahead," she said, smiling warmly. Back at home, Christopher faced a different reality. Ellen, oblivious to his internal turmoil, continued her routine. That night he reflected on the choices he had made and the life he had lost. The sight of his son playing brought a bittersweet smile to his face. He realized that he needed to be a better person, not just for himself but for his son. Meanwhile, Anne and Matthew, along with Eva, were busy preparing for their weekend getaway. They looked forward to the tranquility and joy that awaited them in their new home. Surrounded by friends and family, they knew they were building not just a house, but a life filled with love and happiness. As the weekend approached, the anticipation grew. Anne, Matthew, Wes, and Gwen spent the days laughing, sharing stories, and basking in the beauty of their surroundings. The bonds of friendship and family strengthened, creating memories that would last a lifetime. In the end, both Anne and Christopher learned valuable lessons about love, forgiveness, and the importance of moving forward. For Anne, the future was bright and filled with promise. For Christopher, it was a chance to reflect and grow. Life had taken them on different paths, but each found their way to peace and fulfillment. Barbecue, the delicious smell of grilling meat wafting through the air. Gwen was setting up the picnic table with an array of colorful dishes and fresh salads. Anne, holding a lively toddler in her arms, chatted animatedly with friends, her face glowing with happiness. "Anne, can you believe it's been 3 years since we moved into this house?" Gwen asked, smiling warmly. "It feels like just yesterday we were all here helping you settle in." "I know, right? Time has flown by so quickly. And now look at us, expanding our families and growing closer," Anne replied, gently bouncing her youngest child on her hip. Matthew, wiping his hands on a towel, walked over to Anne and gave her a loving kiss on the forehead. "How are my 2 favorite girls doing?" he asked, smiling at his wife and daughter. "We're great, just enjoying this beautiful day with everyone we love," Anne replied, her heart full of contentment. Evia ran over, her cheeks flushed from playing with Tommy and the other children. "Mama, can we go to the river? Tommy and I want to catch some fish." "Of course, darling. Just be careful and stay where we can see you," Anne said, watching as Eva and Tommy dashed off towards the water with their fishing nets. As the afternoon sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the river, the group gathered around the picnic table to share stories and laughter. The children proudly displayed their catch of the day, tiny fish that they would soon release back into the river. Matthew raised a toast, his voice filled with gratitude, "To our wonderful friends and family who have been there through thick and thin. Here's to many more years of happiness, love, and togetherness." Hear the jubilant crowd echoed, their glasses clinking in unison as they relished the joy of the moment. Anne looked around, her heart swelling with peace and fulfillment as she gazed upon the cherished faces surrounding her. Her journey had been fraught with heartache and challenges, yet it had led her to this serene and perfect moment. She felt a profound certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Later that night, beneath a sky scattered with twinkling stars and beside a crackling campfire, Anne and Matthew sat together, their hands intertwined, soaking in the tranquility of the night. "I'm incredibly thankful for everything we have, Matthew. You've brought boundless joy into my life," Anne murmured, her voice brimming with gratitude. "And you, my darling, have made me the happiest man on earth. Our journey together is just beginning, and I am eager to see where it leads us," Matthew responded, his eyes glowing with love and devotion. As they gazed up at the vast, starry sky, Anne felt a deep sense of closure and the promise of new beginnings. She had discovered true happiness, enveloped in a cocoon of love and friendship. The past was now a distant memory, and the future was filled with endless possibilities, each more exciting than the last. In a moment of quiet reflection, Anne thought of Christopher. She hoped he had found his peace, and perhaps a chance to start anew, just as she had. Life, with its unpredictable twists and turns, had a mysterious way of imparting its deepest lessons, teaching her to cherish the blessings and release the pain that had once weighed heavily on her heart. The air was alive with the sounds of laughter and music, a joyous testament to the happiness that had risen from the ashes of sorrow. Anne closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of Matthew's embrace and the promise of a bright future. She knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, their bond growing stronger and their love deeper with each passing day. The next morning, the sun rose over the river, casting a golden light on the idyllic scene. Anne, Matthew, and their friends continued to create precious memories, their bonds growing deeper and more meaningful. The past was now a distant shadow, and the present was a treasure to be cherished and savored. Their story continued to unfold, a beautiful tale of love, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit of a woman who had found her true happiness. They enjoyed a barbecue by the riverside, with Tommy helping Eva teach her younger brother to ride a three-wheeled bike, while Anne and Gwen watched from their comfortable lounges on the riverbank. "I look at my loved ones and can hardly believe how happy I am, Gwen. It's terrifying to even imagine life without them," Anne confessed, her voice tinged with emotion. "Oh, Anne, I don't think it could have been any other way. You deserve every bit of this happiness. Don't be offended, but I envy you in the best possible way. Every day together seems like a honeymoon. You've loved deeply, and Matthew would move mountains for you." Gwen replied with a heartfelt smile. "Yes, Gwen, you're right. It's like I have wings. Matthew is an incredible man. His business is thriving, and everything is falling into place. By the way, I'm almost done with your dream house project, so we'll be neighbors and see each other more often." Anne said joyfully, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Girls, the meat is ready. Let's eat while it's hot," Matthew called out, his voice filled with warmth. Wes watched his beloved women approaching and couldn't hide his excitement. "Matthew, we're truly lucky to have them," he said, his voice filled with admiration. Matthew turned around, smiling at the sight of the beautiful and cheerful woman before him. Anne thanked fate for everything that had happened in her life, both the good and the bad. Now, she understood the true joy and love of family. Her life, once shattered by betrayal and abandonment, had transformed fundamentally at the most unexpected moment. Nothing happens without a reason. Every encounter holds a purpose. It's crucial to recognize the signs of fate to grasp the happiness passing by. Every day, seeing her beloved husband Matthew playing with the children and hearing their joyous laughter, Anne thanked God for the chance of a happy and carefree future. She loved and was loved in return. Anne now knew for certain that life could begin anew even at 40. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere became even more enchanting. The sky, a canvas of deep blues and purples, was dotted with countless stars, each one a silent witness to their joy. The crackling fire cast a warm glow on their faces, adding to the magic of the night. Anne and Matthew found a quiet moment away from the group, walking hand in hand along the riverbank. The cool breeze whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. "Matthew, do you remember when we first met? I never imagined we would come this far, that we would be this happy," Anne said, her voice filled with wonder. "I remember it like it was yesterday. You were standing there, looking so beautiful and strong. I knew from that moment that you were special, that you were the one I wanted to spend my life with," Matthew replied, his voice filled with sincerity. They stopped and turned to face each other, their eyes locked in a gaze that spoke volumes. "We've come a long way, haven't we? Through all the ups and downs, we've built something beautiful together," Anne said, her voice trembling with emotion. Yes, we have. And I wouldn't trade any of it for the world. Every challenge we faced only made us stronger. And now, here we are, surrounded by love and happiness, Matthew responded, pulling her into a tender embrace. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the world seemed to fade away. At that moment, nothing else mattered but their love and the life they had built together. They were living proof that true happiness could be found, even after the darkest times. Back at the campfire, their friends continued to laugh and share stories, the night filled with camaraderie and joy. Anne and Matthew rejoined the group, their hearts lighter and their spirits lifted. The night was a celebration of love, friendship, and the unbreakable bond they all shared. As the fire died down and the stars began to wane, Anne felt a profound sense of gratitude. She looked around at the faces of those she held dear, feeling a deep connection to each one. Life had brought them together for a reason, and she was thankful for every moment they shared. The next day, as the sun rose and cast its golden light over the river, the group began to stir. Anne and Matthew shared a quiet morning coffee, watching the world wake up around them. "I love these moments with you, just the two of us, enjoying the peace," Anne said, her voice soft. "Me too, Anne. These are the moments that make life so special. Just being with you, sharing these simple pleasures," Matthew replied, his hand resting gently on hers. As their friends began to join them, the day was filled with laughter, adventure, and the creation of new memories. They explored the beautiful surroundings, enjoyed a picnic by the river, and simply reveled in each other's company. Anne's heart was full. She knew that no matter what the future held, she had found her true happiness. She had learned to cherish every moment, to find joy in the simple things, and to appreciate the love that surrounded her. Life, she realized, was a journey filled with unexpected twists and turns. But it was also a journey filled with endless possibilities, with new beginnings waiting around every corner. And as long as she had Matthew by her side, she knew she could face anything. As the sun set on another perfect day, Anne felt a deep sense of contentment. She looked forward to the future, to the adventures yet to come, and to the love that would continue to grow. She had found her true happiness, and she was ready to embrace whatever life had in store. With Matthew, her friends, and the love that bound them all together, Anne knew that her story was far from over. It was just beginning, and she couldn't wait to see where it would take her next. The past was a lesson, the present a gift, and the future an exciting adventure waiting to unfold. And she was ready to embrace it all, with a heart full of love and a spirit full of hope. Thank you for watching this video. We've covered a lot of ground today, exploring various themes and insights that can enrich our lives. What have you learned so far? Please share in the comments below one thing you have learned from this video and how you plan to put it into practice in your life. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support means a lot and helps us continue spreading these powerful messages. Until next time, stay blessed and keep growing in faith.